two of them left the city lights behind, walking east toward the open wilderness. Vitia followed Amasta. As they crossed a small arched bridge over a gently flowing river, she noticed him stumble slightly. He instinctively glanced at the slow-moving water, but quickly masked it, regaining his steady stride as they continued forward. They walked in silence for a long while. Only when the road to the outskirts turned into a crooked dirt path did Amasta stop. From somewhere, he drew his wand and swung it forcefully. A powerful banishing charm sent any animals lurking in the shadows scurrying away from this land that was about to face danger. "Speak, Miss Cleona." A burst of brilliant fire enveloped Amasta, and his casual t-shirt and jeans vanished. In their place appeared a slightly worn, dark green wizard's robe. His sour mood showed faintly in a lazy smile. "How did you figure out that gold viper is actually Amostar Brain? I assume the price you paid wasn't just a pile of galleons?" "Augury, Mr. Brain." In the wilds outside the city, the only light came from billions of stars and the moon above. Vidya, exuding the very essence of nature, seemed to merge with the surrounding landscape. "Divination?" Amasta's expression betrayed disbelief. "I recall casting protective wards to prevent anyone from tracking me or targeting me with some random curse." "Miss Cleona, you're lying." "Divination and sacrifice." Vitia's previously calm, unreadable expression softened, her eyes lowered with a touch of melancholy and sorrow. "You are a powerful wizard, Mr. Brain. To uncover the true identity of Gold Viper, a respected elder gave their life. Truly moving." Amasta let out a derisive laugh, but his gaze was razor-sharp. "For what purpose, Miss Cleona? If I'm not mistaken, I've never had any dealings with the Druids that would warrant a venerable high priestess, bearing your name, no less, approaching me in such a manner. We need your help, Mr. Brain." Vicia lifted her head, her eyes as pure and bright as jade-like starlight fixed on him. She seemed oblivious to the chill radiating from his body as she spoke earnestly. "Since you've heard of us, surely you know of our centuries-long conflict with the Church, Mr. Brain. For generations, we have wandered across multiple countries in Europe and America, seeking a sanctuary. Yet the clergy, those who claim faith yet commit atrocities, have never ceased their slaughter of us. What does that have to do with me?" Amasta sneered. "Don't tell me you want me to lead you into the Vatican to assassinate the Pope. In that case, I know a far more capable man to recommend. Albus Dumbledore, headmaster of Hogwarts, is more powerful than I am, highly respected and kind-hearted. Perhaps he would pity your plight and help you." Vicia clearly did not take his sarcasm seriously. Bearing the weight of history and possessing an unwavering heart, she remained resolute. "We do not wish for our ideological conflict with the Church to harm innocence, Mr. Brain. For centuries, we've relied solely on our own strength to protect our beliefs, barely surviving, never considering the aid of wizards. But..." Amasta had no patience for endless history lessons. He cut her off. "Your objective and why you've come to me, High Priestess, these are the things I want to hear. We wish to open Merlin's tomb, Mr. Brain. Within lies a legendary artifact once belonging to the Druids. With its power, perhaps we can secure a safe haven." "Merlin's tomb?" Amasta narrowed his eyes, voice tinged with doubt. "You mean the Blackstone Tower Merlin built in the underground world of Falling Alley?" Before Vicia could answer, a thought struck him, and his brow furrowed sharply. "I've received warnings. Earlier this year, a previously unseen faction appeared in the underground world. They commissioned expeditions to magical relics, which came to nothing. Then they started inquiring about my identity. That must be the information Mr. Carcassfly conveyed to you." Vicia smiled faintly. "We only issued the commission through him, and we noticed he seems quite curious about our origins." Amasta's mind registered a single thought. She was a formidable woman, difficult to confront, both in strength and in intellect. As the conversation continued, Amasta's anger had cooled from its initial blaze, yet he still felt little fondness for this priestess who had resorted to any means to get close to him. More than anything, he was frustrated at being ensnared by someone like her. "We do not fully understand what lies within that mysterious black tower beneath the underground world. Merlin's final resting place, however, is not there, Mr. Bren." Vedia lifted her right hand. A pale turquoise bracelet around her delicate wrist emitted a dazzling glow before transforming into a wand, its form unusual, like two thick grapevines twisted together. Amasta could feel the raw power and vitality emanating from it. Raising the wand, she traced shapes in the void. Moments later, a luminous, pale white scroll unfurled in the air. Within this screen-like vision appeared an elderly priestess, her eyes and hair identical in color to Vetia's. She stood atop a gray-white altar in a primeval forest Amasta had never seen before, raising a wand identical to Vetia's. As an ancient, mysterious chant resonated through the jungle, the surrounding gnarled trees glowed with emerald luminescence. Black mist rose from the earth, and faint lights and tendrils of mist seemed drawn toward the priestess, converging into a hazy form. The outline sharpened, a golden, monstrous serpent slithered through the untouched forest. The elderly priestess on the altar turned ashen, blood spilling from her mouth, unable to rise. At that moment, Amasta's eyes widened in realization. He finally understood how he had been singled out. Chapter 109, Decision. We received guidance from the earth and the deities we serve. A wizard marked by this serpent will help us retrieve the druidic relics from Merlin's eternal resting place. At first, we were mistaken, searching for months with no results. After some careful divination and investigation, we realized it seems to mark a wizard in the underground world of London. Vetia spoke calmly, while Amasta furrowed his brow, contemplating why a druid priestess's divination would yield such a result. From every perspective, he had no connection to these people. Wizards, in fact, were a conservative and insular group. Even those of impure blood faced ostracism in Europe's magical community. How much more so a branch of the Druids that had long separated from the mainstream secret wizard sects. We dared not openly search the underground world for you, fearing it might cause you trouble. By the time we identified whose mark the serpent truly was, you had already vanished from that world. Amasta said nothing. If not for Dumbledore's trickery returning him to Hogwarts, he might have encountered them months earlier. In desperation, my teacher, the prior priestess of our order, once again sought guidance from the gods. She paid with her life, but finally received clear instructions. Amostar Brain. We learned your name, but at the time you were teaching at Hogwarts, under Albus Dumbledore, the most powerful contemporary wizard, we did not wish to confront a figure under such a banner. Leaking information could have caused misunderstandings with our enemies. So we observed you from the shadows. When you left Hogwarts, the question of how to approach you sparked debate. Some believed we should contact you directly and ask for help. Others insisted on keeping the truth hidden, continuing to post assignments in the underground world and offering rewards. Eventually, you would come to us. A gentle breeze whispered under the moonlight. Amasta gradually let his tension ebb, studying the enigmatic priestess, whose origin and true motives remained shrouded in mystery, weighing his options carefully. Before formally negotiating with you, I wish to offer a gesture of goodwill, so that you might agree to let my companions leave England for another country. Based on prior intelligence, I located this orphanage and volunteered here. Amasta snorted lightly, his tone indifferent. I would argue that your companion's approach is far wiser. The sequence of events was roughly clear, but some questions remained unanswered. For over 1,000 years, countless wizards and even muggles have searched for Merlin's resting place. Yet, apart from the impenetrable Blackstone Tower in the underground world, no valuable clues have emerged. How can you be sure the ruins you found are connected to Merlin? Don't tell me. It was divination again? Vetia remained silent. Amasta knew his question likely touched the druid's innermost secrets. What exactly is in Merlin's ruins, or rather, what do you hope to obtain from them? The ethereal Vetia offered an apologetic smile. I'm sorry, Mr. Brain. I cannot answer that for now, but when you agree to accept the assignment and enter the ruins, you will learn in due time. Amasta couldn't help but curl the corner of his mouth slightly. Though Vidia had said nothing more, at least she hadn't chosen to lie. You should consider yourself fortunate that during your time at the orphanage, you didn't do anything unnecessary, Miss Cleona, Amasta said calmly. Otherwise, the druids might have had to appoint yet another high priestess. You mean, what can you offer me, Miss Cleona? I don't know the precise connection between this relic you speak of and Merlin, nor the dangers it might hold. But I do know the value of this commission is high, so high that galleons alone cannot measure it. What compensation can you provide me? When Amasta returned to the orphanage alone, the moon had already risen on the other side of the building. Breathing in the faint floral scent carried in the quiet night air, he lingered silently in the courtyard for a while. Once his thoughts settled, he walked softly and pushed open the door into the main hall. "Did you two kiss?" A mischievous voice called out from the shadowed hallway on the third floor. "Go to bed quickly, little hammer, for the sake of your own behind." Amasta did not pause in his steps. With a muttered sigh, he reached the room on the sixth floor, prepared for him. In the darkness, he performed a quick wash, letting out a long, relieved exhale before lying down on the soft mattress. Though his body relaxed, his mind churned like storm-tossed waves. Tonight, his understanding of the magical world's unpredictability deepened once again. The druids, who had appeared seemingly out of nowhere, had used divination techniques with us. Amasta would normally have ignored to uncover his identity with astonishing precision. Visha had spoken of a great price paid for this knowledge, but to Amasta, that price seemed negligible. The real problem remained the divination performed by the previous generation of the druids' high priestess. This mysterious ancient sect had endured for centuries. Their conflicts with the Orthodox Church had been mentioned even in Muggle history books. Amasta believed that if they truly desired that legendary magical artifact, such divinations would likely have been performed regularly for generations, only never revealing the needed guidance until now. Considering the immense price Vidya mentioned, Amasta surmised that each generation's high priestess probably performed such divinations at the end of her life. But why him? In the quiet darkness, he furrowed his brow again. The first time he had heard of the druids and the equally ancient surname Cleona was years ago on the Hogwarts Express in the picture cards from Chocolate Frogs he bought from that witch selling peanuts, sunflower seeds, and bottled water. Later, in his fourth year, Professor Binns had mentioned it briefly while recounting the medieval conflicts between wizards, muggles, and the church. Out of curiosity, he had researched more in the library while writing his post-class essays. He never imagined that, many years later, he would actually become entangled with a Cleona. After reflecting on the past 20 years of his life, Amasta was certain he had never had direct dealings with them. Yet he also knew that behind that divination lay a deeper secret, one he had yet to uncover. Amasta could discern that what Vitya Cleona had just told him contained no lies, but there were still elements that demanded careful thought. A single legendary artifact, capable of helping them resist the equally mysterious, and in the Muggle world, extraordinarily influential church, struck Amasta as in some ways absurd. Chapter 110, Stonehenge. "Hello, sir, madam. Tickets are £17 each, so £34 for the two of you. If you're willing to pay an extra £7, we can include a commemorative booklet and a site map." At the entrance booth, a slightly plump young woman, seemingly working part-time, offered a polite smile as she addressed Amasta and Vedya, who were walking together. The western sunlight fell on Amasta's face. He glanced at Vedya, who remained unmoved, seemingly with no intention of paying. Smirking, he pulled a few bills from his pocket and handed them over. 2 weeks had passed since Amasta's return to the orphanage. This was the longest he had stayed there since graduation, not only to honor his promise to Little Hammer, but also to give himself time to consider whether to accept the druid priestess's request. After much difficult deliberation, Amasta had ultimately agreed. Not because Vedya could offer any significant reward. These druids, long persecuted by the church for centuries, were hardly wealthy. Their combined galleons likely didn't match even a fraction of Amasta's own. He had 2 reasons for agreeing. First, Merlin's relics were an irresistible temptation for any wizard, or even muggle. Even Dumbledore, if he knew of it, would probably not have hesitated to investigate personally, though Amasta still did not understand the true nature of the final resting place of Merlin the priestess spoke of. Second, Amasta remained deeply concerned about the divination made by the prior druid priestess before her death. Whether the church or the druids, they were religious powers, and Amasta, as a traditional lineage wizard, had never dealt with such fervent sects. He could not understand why he would be involved. Deep down, though, Amasta suspected it might have something to do with his identity as a traveler through time. It was now summer vacation. Stonehenge, located on the Salisbury Plain in Wiltshire, was crowded with people. For Amasta, this was the first time he had witnessed such a scene in the magical world, though he had often experienced it in his previous Muggle life. Lost in thought amidst the crowd, Amasta suddenly felt a cool weight pressed against him. Realizing that Vedia had been jostled into his embrace, he blinked in surprise. Feeling her slightly stiff back against his chest, he drew a deep breath. A distinct, fresh scent reached his nose, causing his pulse to quicken and his mind to briefly falter. "Sorry, Mr. Bren." Her cool, clear voice cut through the clamor like a bucket of cold water, dispelling any rising unease. Amasta hooked his fingers in his jean pocket, shielding their conversation from the surrounding noise. "So, this is the Merlin relics you spoke of?" Amasta exhaled heavily, smirking. "Merlin wove himself into the stones before dying? No wonder no one has ever found his final resting place in over 1,000 years." Following the flow of the crowd, they stood behind a white-painted iron railing. Not far off, a Muggle guide was explaining the history of Stonehenge to a group of middle school students. The Salisbury Stone Circle, the Ring of Standing Stones, the Sun Temple, prehistoric stone tables. Throughout history, Stonehenge has gone by many names. Scientists generally date its construction to around 2000 BCE. How ancient peoples, during a period of extremely limited productivity, built such a monumental structure remains unresolved. "Sir, why did people build it?" a young student asked, raising his hand eagerly. The boy's enthusiasm made Amasta smile. He recalled Hermione Granger, always eager to answer questions in his Defense Against the Dark Arts class, and wondered how she might react to reading a report on Gilderoy Lockhart. "Good question." Over the surrounding noise, the Muggle guide had to raise his voice to be heard. "Historians believe ancient peoples built it for astronomical observation. The main axis, the ancient path to the stones, and the sunrise on the summer solstice align. Two stones also point toward the winter solstice sunset. It's thought to be an early form of an observatory. The founder of the ancient druids also built it to channel cosmic energy for divination," Vedia added. "Channel cosmic energy?" In the magical world, the origins and purpose of Stonehenge were already debated, but Vedia's claim added a new layer. Amasta's brow furrowed. "What do you mean by that?" Vedia, wearing a white floral dress and sun hat, fell silent, staring at the stone doorway. For some reason, her presence radiated subtle resistance. Amasta studied her thoughtfully, then asked after a pause, "I don't know how this Stonehenge is connected to the relics you mentioned, but I assume you've been inside many times already, haven't you?" "You are perceptive, Mr. Bren. A captivating appearance draws attention wherever it goes. Many of the surrounding tourists couldn't help but glance at Vitia standing by the white railing. Yet Amasta, walking beside her, felt little of the pride or envy such attention might inspire. Instead, there was a faint unease. He had finally recognized a witch whose mental defenses could rival his own, aside from Snape and Dumbledore. For the next stretch of time, the two exchanged few words, simply following the group of Muggle tourists as they toured the massive stone circle. Amasta tried observing Stonehenge from other perspectives, subtly noticing how the magically balanced energies in the space were oddly distorted. By logic, such distortion suggested a high concentration magic node, but no matter how he looked, the stones themselves appeared ordinary without any obvious features. To the southeast, the moon had risen over the horizon of the plains. Amasta and Vitia dined at a nearby Muggle restaurant, and as night deepened, they joined the camping tourists on the grass, setting up their tents. Both were skilled in such matters. Without using magic, they quickly assembled a dome-shaped tent with ease. "How long do we need to wait?" Facing the rolling green waves of the plain, Amasta asked after a long silence. For some reason, he had a premonition that the upcoming exploration would bring unexpected events. Yet the druid high priestess seemed highly reluctant to speak about the relic. Whenever Amasta casually brought it up, she immediately fell silent. From the tents nearby, lights and firelight cast curious glances their way. Several Muggle men were quietly observing Vitia, whose refined, almost Eastern appearance captivated them. Unconsciously, they were drawn to her ethereal presence. Two young men from a nearby group even stood up, apparently intending to approach her. But before they could get close, Amasta's watchful gaze intimidated them. They laughed awkwardly and turned away. It's best to wait until the muggles are asleep, Mr. Bran, Vedia said. We'll make some noise later. Chapter 111. The Mirror of Eris. Late at night, the plains were bathed in moonlight, bright as a powerful spotlight, casting every swaying blade of grass in sharp relief. Most of the camping muggles had fallen into deep sleep, though a few remained in front of tents, drinking drunkenly by the fire. At the park, night patrols had curled up in guard posts, asleep. To prevent accidents, Amostar, ever cautious, silently cast a sleep spell on each, ensuring they wouldn't wake up at inconvenient moments. As darkness enveloped the land, the ordinary stones in the railing began to reveal subtle differences. A thin, mysterious mist appeared from nowhere, swirling around the stones. In its hazy veil, the stone circle radiated faintly enigmatic energy. Muggles had long noticed such phenomena. Despite experiments and research, Muggle scientists could never explain them, and eventually attributed the effects to the area's abnormal geomagnetic field. This stone circle is incomplete. The missing pillars are key to opening the relic. Over long periods, we have located only one pillar and still haven't completed it. Vitia said with mild regret as she spoke to Amostar near the stone gate. By now, she was no longer dressed in Muggle clothing, but wore a pale yellowish linen wizard's robe. She held a grapevine staff, her green hair flowing softly behind her, fully embodying Amostar's image of a mysterious druid high priestess. Amostar placed his palm on the gatepost, feeling an unnatural warmth radiate into his hand. After a moment, he didn't ask how to open the gate, but instead turned to Vitia, who seemed perpetually unreadable, and casually asked, "How many times have you failed?" "I've entered 3 times," she replied calmly. "My teacher entered 5 times, Mr. Brain. The space behind the gate exerts a pressure ordinary people can't withstand. Of course, it shouldn't trouble a powerful wizard like yourself too much." Amostar knew the ordinary people she spoke of were certainly not muggles, but being mentally prepared, he wasn't overly concerned. Chapter 111. The Threshold. Because of the incompleteness of the portal, the location where we arrive inside is random. The previous druid priestesses left markers at the center of the relic. I can reach it directly using the markers, but, Mr. Bren, you will likely need to rely on your own power to reach the island's center. Amostar's ears perked at the mention of island. Though this expedition was ostensibly to help Vedia retrieve what she called the druid relics from Merlin's final resting place, he also had a personal goal, understanding why the prophecies of the ancient druid priestesses were tied to him. Prophecies might seem ethereal, but they followed logic and causality. Amostar never believed that fate or mere bad luck was the reason he encountered such events. "Then open it, Miss Creona. I'm eager to see what lies within." Amostar flicked his wand from his sleeve, stepping back a few paces, his tone cold and detached. Yet curiously, Vedia did not move. Instead, she pointed her wand at the massive stone gate before them. "Before entering the relic, we will encounter certain obstacles, Mr. Bren. You must be mentally prepared." Before he could ask anything, Vedia's lashes quivered as she explained, her gaze fixed on the stone door. "When the pillars are restored to their positions, this gate will reveal its true form, the Mirror of Eris. I assume you've heard of it before. The Mirror of Eris, the mirror that reflects one's innermost desires." Amostar inclined his head, murmuring under his breath. Though his expression remained calm, he carefully activated his mental shielding, hiding the flicker of shock from his mind. The Mirror of Eris has 2 sides. One reveals the deepest desires of a person's heart, while the other serves as the door to the relic. Only those who dare confront the past they least wish to revisit may step inside. Amostar's brow twitched imperceptibly as he sifted through memories, those he had long avoided revisiting, and those concerning the Mirror of Eris. The existence of the Mirror of Eris was not entirely secret. Many books on legendary alchemical objects described this magical mirror that reflected the heart, but Amostar had never heard that it had 2 sides, each with entirely different effects. Another question remained: why would this mysterious relic, which he had not yet entered, use the Mirror of Eris as its gateway? The creator of the Mirror of Eris was unknown in the magical world. Even if Vedia now claimed it was Merlin's work, Amostar would not be surprised. But the origin of the name Eris, even many muggles would recognize it. In Greek mythology, Eris is the sister of Ares, daughter of Zeus and Hera, the goddess of discord and strife. Her most famous tale is the Judgment of the Golden Apple. At that thought, Amasta's eyelids twitched sharply. Were it not for his mental shielding, he might have been visibly shaken. Island, Golden Apple, Druids. These keywords sparked like lightning in Amasta's mind, allowing him to form a conjecture and even certainty about the truth. Ever since learning of the final resting place of Merlin from this enigmatic woman, Amasta had treated it as a joke. Merlin, practically a mythic figure in the modern magical world, could hardly have his resting place revealed so easily. Yet now he began to doubt his prior assumptions. The heart of the ancient Druids' faith, the most important island in the Arthurian legends, the sacred utopia of Celtic Muggle mythology, Avalon. Beyond the names Blessed Isle and Isle of Providence, there was one often overlooked alias, the Golden Apple Isle. Could it be that behind this gate truly lay Merlin's final resting place? In just a few heartbeats, Amasta's palms had grown damp with sweat. He clenched his teeth, forcing himself not to question Vedia, though his mind was a tangled storm. Vedia seemed to sense the change, but said nothing. After casting a wary glance around, she raised her wand toward the night sky. A single ancient stone pillar, exuding the aura of time itself, materialized in a radiant, sacred white glow. Amasta drew a deep breath, letting his calm rationality regain control. He remained silent, nerves taut, eyes fixed on Vedia's movements. He had no choice but to be cautious. This druid priestess, bathed in a shifting aura of light and shadow, harbored too many secrets. Vigilance was essential. Chapter 112, Memories. Late October 1979, nightfall. On the southern shore of Firth Bay, Edinburgh's streets and alleys were alive with festive cheer. Even the untimely off-season thunderstorm could not dampen the celebrations of this grand occasion. Through the torrential downpour, the Palace of Holyrood, St. Cross Palace, at the end of the Royal Mile, glowed brilliantly. The dense curtain of rain shrouded the historic palace in a misty veil, but it could not hide the aura of solemnity and latent danger that clung to its walls. A piercing, thunderous clang of the doors opening rang out, seeming to overwhelm the sound of billions of raindrops hitting the earth. The palace garage doors swung wide, and 13 black cars glided out in orderly procession, cutting through the rain and disappearing into the night. Tonight, the sacred thorns would defend their master's glory. In the city center, a 3-story Georgian-style house was filled with joyous birthday songs. Outside, pumpkin lanterns hanging from the eaves swayed in the wind and rain, their flickering rhythm almost celebrating along with the young hostess inside. In the fireplace along the wall, neatly stacked oak logs blazed brightly. Across from it, a golden apple, framed with mistletoe and dotted with thousands of strange golden acorns, glimmered under the firelight. Leaning against the window frame, Mr. Hill withdrew his gaze from the endless darkness outside and turned to watch his daughter. She sat at the long dining table, radiant in a golden tulle dress, a vine-crafted crown atop her head, laughing with unrestrained joy. His eyes shone with boundless love. Yet on his handsome face, a shadow of worry lingered, refusing to dissipate. "My dear?" Mrs. Hill, graceful as ever, gently brushed her daughter's temple. Noticing her husband's unease, she quietly moved to the window while her daughter chatted, forcing a smile to calm his mind. "This is a rare chance for a family gathering, darling. You should spend more time with us." "I'm sorry, Hea." Mr. Hill smiled with effort in response to his wife's concern. He glanced again at the wind and rain, the roaring storm outside, and after a long moment exhaled heavily. "I just feel uneasy, Hea. I have a sense that something is about to happen." A slender, delicate hand pressed against his chest, feeling the erratic beating of his heart. Mrs. Hill sighed softly. "I know what worries you, my love, but—" She looked down at their daughter, snuggling into her father's arms, and let out another soft sigh. "This is her wish, darling. She wants to spend her birthday with her grandparents. You know the weight she will bear in the future. I couldn't say no." Mr. Hill remained silent, staring at his elf-like innocent daughter. In the depths of her pale green eyes flickered not only tenderness but a trace of resentment. "When we return this time, I intend to persuade the teachers to move all the disciples out of the jungle. Many signs indicate that it is no longer safe there." After a long pause, Mr. Hill spoke again, prompting a frown from Mrs. Hill. "We've been living there for so long. Where do you intend to go?" The Forbidden Forest at Hogwarts. It's perfect for us. The centaurs won't be a problem. We respect nature and the stars. We can coexist with them. Mrs. Hill withdrew her hand from her husband's chest, her frown deepening. After a brief silence, she pierced through the reason he had tried to hide. You want the protection of that wizard, Albus Dumbledore, don't you? That would be the best outcome, wouldn't it? Mr. Hill did not flinch at his wife, seeing through his intentions. He replied honestly, Dumbledore's power and generosity are known to all. If we can gain his protection, we will have some breathing room. I mean, we wouldn't have to rush so desperately to obtain that item. If it were any other time, I might support your boldness, my dear. Mr. Hill hadn't finished when his words were cut off by his wife. But we both know this isn't the right moment. Those wizards are already facing enormous trouble. That so-called mysterious one is stirring chaos across the wizarding world. Even Albus Dumbledore can barely keep up. And if, at a time like this, he were to openly accept us... Rumble, blinding lightning tore across the sky, and the deafening roar of thunder masked the approach of death itself. When the low hum of the storm subsided, Mrs. Hill continued, her voice firm. Do you really think he would bring upon himself another enemy he might not even be able to handle right now? Mr. Hill's breathing grew rapid. He had considered all of this, yet hope still lingered in his chest. Dumbledore is a kind wizard. Surely you know, we and the wizards were once united. He wouldn't stand by while someone suffered. That was centuries ago, my dear. We've long since parted ways with them. Perhaps Dumbledore, being honorable, would feel some sympathy for our plight. But I believe a wizard like him is not kind to the point of foolishness. He absolutely wouldn't. Father? Mother? The tension between the two elders spilled into the room. At the dining table, Vetia, alerted by her grandparents, tilted her head and blinked her bright and had clear eyes toward the hallway. Go fetch your father and mother, my little sprite. As you command. Her silver-haired grandfather whispered gently in her ear, and Vetia immediately leapt from his lap, her mischievous antics drawing laughter from everyone in the room. The Hill couple inhaled deeply, letting the slight tension between them soften. They spread their arms and welcomed the rosy-cheeked daughter smiling innocently at them. Rumble! Suddenly, the ground convulsed violently. The space above the first floor of the house seemed as if struck by a massive pendulum and vanished. The airborne dust barely had time to rise before rain turned it into thick mud. In the sudden gloom, a cluster of pure white, sacred light fell like a meteor, driving into the chaotic wreckage. Scarlet blood, piercing screams, and icy sobs, no thunder, no matter how loud, could drown them out. Wah! I will have my revenge! Amid the shattered walls, a little girl stood crying helplessly in a puddle of blood-soaked acorns. Around her lay motionless bodies, hands outstretched in futile reach. I will kill you all. Her tiny voice, filled with deep, relentless hatred, vowed defiance to fate itself. Though resolute, it could not move destiny. Wicked heretics. A cold, detached judgment came through the rain. The sacred light shimmered again, briefly replacing the darkness that engulfed the world, intent on eradicating any seed of resistance in the soil. Within the ruined fireplace, charred oak suddenly burst into brilliant green light. A tiny sprout stretched skyward, rising from ashes of death. In the blink of an eye, it became a towering tree, shielding the land from the purifying light. Forgive me, Vetia. The old priestess, hair the color of emerald and eyes of vivid green, ignored the screams of the druid followers impaled by the treetop branches. Step by step, she approached Vetia, gently embracing the small shoulders. Rain mixed with tears and sweat streamed freely across her aged face. Why, teacher? Why won't they leave us alone? The little girl could no longer stifle her sobs and wailed openly. We've almost forgotten where this hatred began, Vetia, and we don't know when it will end, the old priestess said, her voice heavy with sorrow, yet her green eyes were resolute. The only thing we can do is to fight to the very end. Chapter 113, The Colorless Realm. Then, standing before the arched water mirror, its edges etched with golden runes, Vetia glanced back at Amostar with an expression so calm it revealed nothing. She gave a slight nod. I will be waiting for you at the temple in the center of the island, Mr. Breen. Without waiting for a response, she stepped into the rippling water mirror and vanished completely, slipping beyond the reach of Amostar's magical senses. A cool night breeze swept across the plain, tossing Amasta's messy gray hair in the starlight, yet he remained motionless, his eyes sharp and predatory as they fixed on the slowly calming mirror surface. Doubts began to creep into his mind. The troubles tied to this woman were far greater than he had imagined. He questioned whether forcing himself to confront the prophecy that connected them was wise or reckless. And yet, a voice seemed to echo in his mind, insistent and urgent, compelling him forward. Ignore it, and he would regret it for the rest of his life. This near-prophetic instinct was irresistible, preventing him from turning back. A low hum resonated. After a long hesitation, Amasta stepped forward, standing before the Eris mirror, a relic unknown to the world. The water shimmered and blurred, and within seconds a scene appeared before him, making his brow rise in surprise. The world within was icy and silent. Snowflakes drifted slowly from a sullen sky, and the wind, etched with frost by the falling snow, was the only thing moving across the frozen cityscape. London lay trapped in a rare, decades-long winter. A woman in her early 20s, her matted hair frozen into clumps, emaciated and dressed in tattered rags, carried a swaddled newborn as she stumbled through street after street. Her eyes, hollow and devoid of emotion, betrayed no sense of purpose. The infant, less than 2 days old, struggled to open its eyes to the sky, its cries more akin to the wails of one on the brink of death. Amasta stood silently before the mirror, staring at the shifting lights and shadows. Memories he had long thought buried surged like molten lava. For a fleeting moment, he felt transported back to the first and most powerless days of his new life in this world. Pathetic. The whispered word dissipated into the night wind, lost amidst the starlit plain. Unlike apparition, which compressed the body into a sensation akin to being squeezed through a soft tube, this crossing felt different. He lost all sense of his physical form, as if only a cluster of consciousness wrapped in bubbles was hurtling through the cosmic sea at incomprehensible speed. In this state, time could not be felt nor measured. Amasta could only drift, his perception locked on a distant, unreachable white light, his awareness slowly dissolving into the monotonous roar around him. Ding! Suddenly, a delicate crystalline chime cut through the void, snapping Amasta's dormant consciousness into awareness. He instinctively scanned his surroundings, searching for the source of the sound, but there was nothing, no trace of human craft save for the door behind him. Then realization struck. He looked down and discovered that beneath him was not solid ground, but an endless, mirror-like lake, as vast as an ocean. Frowning, Amasta lifted his toes to touch the surface. Ripples radiated outward, distorting his reflection perfectly. But within a few breaths, the water settled, undisturbed. No matter how hard he pressed, he could not pierce the surface. This was truly a strange phenomenon. Without casting a single spell, he could stand steadily atop the lake's surface. That alone made him sense the extraordinary nature of this ruin. Amasta lowered his head, silently scrutinizing the water beneath him, attempting to discern its secrets. But suddenly his expression shifted subtly. What caused this reaction wasn't the mirror-like stillness of the lake, but his own reflection within it. No color? His gaze snapped to his right hand, tightly gripping his wand, and as he looked, his frown deepened. This was neither an illusion nor a trick of the eyes. The reflection on the water truly reflected reality. His own image had lost all color. The aged wizard robes, the pale skin of his hands, even the black wand, everything had turned into lifeless shades of gray, as if some mysterious, powerful force had drained all color from existence itself. In an instant, a whirlpool of energy spun wildly in his eyes. Raw, intense magical power surged endlessly from his lean frame. The hurricane of magic distorted the lake's reflection, yet it did not alter this secret realm that had slumbered undisturbed for countless years. Even so, by heightening his magical perception to its limit, Amasta discerned certain truths. He wandered aimlessly in one direction for a while before stopping, his face grave. Exactly. The flow of time in this secret space has been disturbed by some malevolent force. It isn't uniform, only minute variations, but enough to notice. He murmured under his breath, pressing his lips tight as he surveyed the empty expanse. Vedia had said she would be waiting for him at the temple in the island's center, yet clearly there was nothing here. No island, no temple. Aha! Finally inside! Just as Amasta bowed his head in thought, a sudden, hearty laugh echoed from somewhere ahead. His hair stood on end and his face froze in astonishment. Someone had followed him into the secret realm. Impossible! Suppressing his shock, Amasta fixed his gaze and saw the once calm space 20 feet above the lake suddenly twist. Strong, powerful hands emerged from the warped air. The figure seemed to be penetrating some barrier, its muscular arms struggling as the body pushed forward inch by inch. Truly, Amasta had encountered his fair share of strange wonders over the years, yet nothing as bizarre as this. He momentarily forgot caution, staring dumbfounded at the slowly forming figure in midair. Rumble! Unlike the crisp sound he made when landing on the lake, the massive figure, crashing down, shook the ground with a deafening roar. Even the lake itself, which Amasta had been unable to break, bent under the impact, as if a massive celestial body had warped space with its gravity. How is this possible? Absurd! He stared in disbelief at a figure 50 feet away, a middle-aged wizard in archaic robes, shoulder-length flaming red hair, seemingly unaffected by the mysterious forces within this space. He let out a stunned roar. Amasta recognized this powerful wizard. He had seen him in countless magical texts, biographies, and oil paintings. And not just him, practically every wizard in the world would know this man. Godric Gryffindor? Amasta knew his expression must look ridiculous, yet he could not close his mouth, agape in shock. He stared at the red-haired, imposing middle-aged man, rubbing his eyes repeatedly, hoping he was hallucinating. How is this possible? He murmured, racking his brain to make sense of the absurd scene before him. Yet aside from the possibility that some illusion magic had been cast upon him, he could think of no rational explanation for the profound astonishment and confusion he felt in that moment. Indeed, he could sense the unusual flow of time permeating this space, but that did not mean it was normal for Godric Gryffindor to appear before him, alive and real. This was one of the 4 legendary founders of Hogwarts, a wizard of near-mythical status from a millennium ago. His ideas and philosophies had influenced the magical world profoundly, even 1,000 years later. What kind of power could allow Godric Gryffindor to span 1,000 years and stand here in front of him? A time-turner? The thought flickered in Amasta's mind, only to be discarded in less than a millisecond. What a joke. A wizard as formidable as Gryffindor would not be affected by any time-turner. Not him, not even Dumbledore, and certainly not Amasta himself. Even if all the time-turners in the wizarding world were combined, they could not push back time for even a single day. Moreover, the past is fixed, but the future holds countless possibilities. A time-turner can only reach back, not forward, certainly not a millennium into the future. Not even the most ancient and mysterious magic could achieve that. Who are you? Cold sweat, like dewdrops on morning leaves, dotted Amasta's forehead. He drew shallow breaths, throwing aside all thoughts of Merlin's relics, Vetia Creona, and prophecies. His brown eyes contracted to pinpoints, locking onto the man not far from him. The man, who had appeared without warning, seemed entirely unaware of Amasta's presence. He surveyed the ruins and the ground with a curious gaze, standing casually, yet the entire landscape seemed to react, alert to him. Fiery red hair, a square jaw marred by a scar, a knightly muscular build, and a finely crafted mithril sword at his hip despite holding no wand. Every detail screamed Godric Gryffindor. Wait, that sword. Amasta shivered, astonishment flashing across his eyes. The sword at the man's hip was not the Gryffindor sword. Months earlier, in the Slytherin chamber, Amasta had seen Potter wield the famed sword against a basilisk, a shining silver blade with a ruby the size of an egg in its hilt, crafted in an elaborate fairy-like style. The sword this mysterious man carried was also silver, but plain. No ornate hilt, no decorative flourishes. Compared to Potter's ceremonial-looking sword, this one was clearly built for combat. Amasta pressed his lips tight, his initial shock fading into a sharp, predatory glint. Could it be that this man merely resembled Gryffindor and was a devoted admirer, dressing the part? That explanation was far more rational than the idea of Gryffindor himself crossing a millennium. Yet Amasta remained on edge. He could not sense the man's magic, yet the aura of danger emanating from him was overwhelming, an intimidation even Dumbledore could not match. He opened his mouth to question the man's identity, but before he could speak, the man's own words answered him and shattered Amasta's defenses further. The red-haired man, who had been studying his surroundings, suddenly looked up at the unclouded, pure gray sky, then grinned. Found you. Ha! Looks like the pillar Roina found and Helga's prophecy weren't wrong after all. Roina and Helga. Amasta could no longer deceive himself. This was Godric Gryffindor. But the question remained, how had he done it? Mr. Gryffindor, you. Amasta's voice was dry, strained, yet the red-haired man ignored him, drawing the silver sword at his waist instead. With a graceful motion, a lion, half again as large as normal, eyes like red rubies, mane ablaze with fiery red, appeared at his summons. The man vaulted effortlessly onto the lion's back, a picture of ease and natural command, and this scene shattered Amasta's previous assumptions. He wasn't surprised that Gryffindor could wield a silver sword as a conduit for magic. Mithril is an excellent magical conductor, rare, expensive, and less compatible with modern spells than a wooden wand, yes, but it could still channel magic. Nor was he surprised that Gryffindor's Patronus was a magical creature. Many historical records hinted at such guardians, rare but not unheard of. Dumbledore's Phoenix, Amasta's own Patronus, both magical creatures. What stunned Amasta was how Gryffindor mounted his Patronus. The Patronus charm is one of the most advanced white magics, capable of repelling Dementors. Its power depends not merely on magical energy, but on the harmony between that energy and the wizard's inner positive strength. Of course, a Patronus isn't limited to repelling Dementors. With the right spellwork, it can also act as a messenger. But as a mount, Amasta couldn't comprehend it. Patronuses are magical constructs, not physical beings. A wizard whose magical talent was so exceptional that Dumbledore called it unparalleled, and whose magical perception was peerless, Amasta could usually understand the principle behind almost any spell at a glance. But the Patronus Gryffindor had summoned, he had to admit he had no idea how it worked, just as he could not sense the magic coursing through Gryffindor's own body. And of course, Godric Gryffindor wouldn't bother explaining the mechanics of his magic. From start to finish, he hadn't so much as glanced at Amasta, as if he didn't exist. Tilting his broad, square face toward the sky, his piercing eyes locked on the heavens, he leapt, and the massive Patronus beneath him carried him effortlessly into the boundless expanse above. Amasta's gaze followed, and suddenly his eyes narrowed. He had noticed something new. Far off, under the gray-white sky, a tiny black speck appeared. In the outside world, one might assume it was a Muggle airplane or a bird, but here, in this barren ruin, it seemed unusual. Avalon Island, in the sky, Amasta ground out the words between his teeth, though he had no time to dwell on it. Fixing his eyes on the crimson lion shrinking rapidly in the distance, he took a deep breath and, in the next instant, leapt as a shadow, soaring after it into the heavens. Chapter 115. Enigma. Whoosh. In a gray, desolate world, two figures, a red and a gray one, swept across the high vault of the sky like meteors, falling from the ground toward the firmament. Mr. Gryffindor! Amasta's shout carried over the screaming wind, yet the red-haired man seemed unfazed, his eyes fixed only on the floating island above. Amasta clamped his mouth shut. The cold, biting wind allowed him a moment of detachment from the absurdity of seeing Godric Gryffindor alive before him. His mind finally began to work again. Gryffindor wasn't deaf or blind. Here was a living, breathing man shouting repeatedly at him. How could he not even glance once in Amasta's direction? Even if Amasta appeared as insignificant as a worm to Gryffindor, he would not be utterly ignored. What state was Gryffindor in? Was he truly real? Amasta soon lost the energy to ponder that. Crossing some boundary, his expression changed abruptly. He nearly reverted from shadow form to human. The space overflowed with thick, deathly, decayed magic, sticky and oppressive. Amasta felt like a stunt diver plunging from great heights into a pool, the nauseating, unstoppable magical force assaulting him, but it did not knock him out. Meanwhile, atop the Patronus lion, Gryffindor's carefree expression darkened slightly. He raised his silver sword and slashed repeatedly at the void ahead. No flashy spellwork appeared, but with each strike, the oppressive darkness lifted, as if murky water had been cut open, revealing a narrow strip of clear surface. Behind him, Amasta, already feeling suffocated, exhaled heavily, careful not to underestimate it, and followed the clean path the sword had carved through the air. This was bizarre, wasn't it? Amasta knew little of the Druids, but he knew enough. They revered nature. Vedia exuded a fresh, life-filled natural magic. Yet here, the legendary Avalon Island of the ancient Druids was shrouded in an oppressive aura of death and decay. Why? What secret did Merlin's relic truly conceal? Had Merlin perished and transformed? As the two swept across the sky, the distant black speck grew rapidly. 10 minutes later, Amasta could make out Avalon Island clearly, finally understanding why it was called the Apple Isle. From below, the massive island's silhouette bore a striking resemblance to an apple. A massive island hovered high above, suspended by forces beyond imagination. Amasta knew with absolute certainty that he would never forget this sight. In a daze, he recalled years ago when Professor Snape had come to the orphanage where he lived, showing him magic in the dormitory. A simple transfiguration had shattered his perception of the world, overturning everything he thought he knew. And now Amasta faced that same sense of awe once again. Incredible. How is this even possible? He gazed upward at the island through his magical perception, feeling as if one foot still stood in the magical world while the other had stepped into the ephemeral realm of myth. Of course, if he were merely observing from the outside, he would feel awe and admiration for such masterful magic. But knowing that he might have some ambiguous connection to this monumental relic made his heart heavy. He felt, faintly, an invisible hand dragging him into the mire, threatening to consume him. More accurately, he had long been in the swamp. Only now did the monstrous claw lurking beneath finally reach for him. Whoosh! A sudden dizzying vertigo struck him. The world around him rocked violently, and the powerful magical fields shifted wildly. In an instant, the turbulence forced him out of his shadowed state, revealing his physical form once more. The world spun. The colossal island that had been above him now shifted beneath his feet, while the boundless lake he had walked upon appeared overhead, transformed into a pristine sky. Gryffindor seemed to have anticipated this change. He merely smirked, muttered that it was interesting, and grasped the lion's fiery mane with his left hand, charging toward the island below. Amasta, however, ran into serious trouble. The chaotic magical field and the sudden surge of intensely evil power suppressed him heavily. He plummeted as if free-falling, casting several spells to arrest his descent, yet each fizzled as sparks fizzed from his wand tip. Ridiculous. Could he actually die here? Gritting his teeth, he stared at the land below. Gray columns of smoke spiraled upward. Controlling his panic, he flicked his wand once more. Immediately, furious winds whipped through the dead air beneath him, dense blunting his fall. 10 feet above the ground, Amasta regained control of his body and landed with a splash in the mud. Only a few seconds later, his head still numb, he rose from the muck. But as he scanned the scene before him, ready to clear the mud with his wand, he froze. Amasta had never seen the end of the world, yet he believed that if doomsday truly came, it would resemble this, where once had been a thriving forest, now lay a graveyard of life. Towering trees were broken and submerged. Only scattered charred stumps remained, crooked in the endless swamp. Gray smoke spiraled from the remains of various magical creatures. Whispers of ghostly wails filled the air. Everything before him was obscure and grim, like the world caught between night and day on a rainy day. Invisible magic pressed upon him, suffocating his emotions, letting despair rise uncontrollably. Yet, amid this horror, a strange clarity emerged. He sensed that the source of this devastation was likely the legendary magical item Vedia Cleona sought to extract from Avalon. With its power, perhaps we could secure a place of safety. The words Vedia had spoken earlier echoed in his mind. He had dismissed them then, but now he dared not underestimate them. Generations of druid priestesses have tried to enter this realm and retrieve it. All in vain. The divinations say only I can claim it. Amasta pressed his lips together, his gaze heavy, murmuring under his breath, uneasy. Whatever was happening to him now had surely touched the deepest, most hidden mysteries of the magical Harry Potter world. Behind him, Gryffindor stood on the riverbank, surveying the mist-shrouded expanse of this death-filled world. The relaxed, almost casual demeanor of his broad, scarred face was gone. In its place, solemnity and anger flickering in his eyes. Even he, as formidable as he was, seemed powerless against this devastated world, letting out a quiet, helpless sigh. Amasta turned, meeting Gryffindor's eyes. The very man who had given him unprecedented shock, yet appeared almost indifferent to him. For a moment, Amasta hesitated, then suddenly raised his wand, striking downward with all his strength toward Godric Gryffindor. Whoosh! A cracked, withered branch floated up from the water. With a sharp swing of his arm, Amasta sent it slicing through the air thick with the scent of death, aiming straight for Godric Gryffindor's feet. Shuck! The branch pierced through Gryffindor's foot and drove into the muddy ground, but not a drop of blood appeared. So, it's still an illusion. Amasta exhaled in relief. To act against one of Hogwarts' legendary founders, the historically documented Godric Gryffindor, required enormous courage. Testing him like this was no light decision. Amasta's sharp eyes lingered on the illusion before him. It was flawless, nearly indistinguishable from reality, yet he remained engulfed in confusion. No spellbook recorded anything remotely similar, and no one could tell him what he was witnessing. He had no choice but to rely on his own reasoning. Undoubtedly, he murmured to himself. In the distant past, Godric Gryffindor personally set foot in this hidden realm. His presence left traces, recorded by the realm's chaotic temporal flow, and now, before me, they manifest as a phantom. Squinting, Amasta's penetrating gaze seemed to pierce the secrets left by time itself. In a voice only he could hear, he whispered, "The effects of the sword strikes he made in midair earlier, I understand now. I exist along the trajectory of Gryffindor's exploration of this sanctuary. Those clean fissures were created by him 1,000 years ago. A truly terrifying wizard." If it had been Amasta, he could theoretically craft a spell whose effects lasted a millennium. Certain self-sustaining spells aligned with the rules of nature could endure, but that was in the outside world. Here, in this distorted magical environment, no spell could withstand the wear of death itself. So, did the previous druids ever witness Gryffindor's phantom, or am I the only one? He could not answer that yet. He had a faint suspicion that neither Vedia nor her predecessors had seen Gryffindor's trajectory. Otherwise, they would have sought Hogwarts' aid long ago. But why such a coincidence? Amasta did not believe it was mere chance that Gryffindor's apparition appeared immediately upon his entry into the sanctuary. And then, suddenly, a possibility dawning in his mind. The first time I unleashed magic on the lake's surface, Gryffindor appeared afterward. He was waiting for me? Though he now understood the state of the Gryffindor before him, countless questions remained. Why was Gryffindor seeking Avalon Island? The words he had muttered, the pillar Roina found, Helga's prophecy, suggested that the founders were planning something critical even a millennium ago. Moreover, Avalon Island, the sacred site of the life-revering druids, was shrouded in apocalyptic decay, yet Vedia called it the eternal resting place of Merlin. The results of her predecessor's divinations, this mysterious ruin, all of it seemed inexplicably connected to him. As Amasta pondered, Gryffindor, who had been scanning the surroundings, appeared to notice something. He dismissed the Patronus, turned, and strode in a particular direction. Suppressing his many doubts, Amasta hurriedly pulled himself out of the mud along the shore, closely following the phantom Gryffindor. They walked along the embankment for about 2 minutes before a simple, yet finely crafted oak boat appeared in Amasta's view. At this point, Amasta could be certain. This skyborne island was the legendary Avalon. Both Muggle and Wizarding records described it clearly, surrounded by swamps, forests, and mist. Only a small boat could reach its center. For a legendary wizard like Gryffindor, the pervasive deathly and decayed magic here posed no serious obstacle. He could have ridden his Patronus over the misty swamps directly to the island's center, but he did not. Upon entering the island, Gryffindor became silent, his eyes fixed on the island with a deep, resolute gaze. With a swift movement, he leapt onto the small boat. Yet its waterline did not shift at all. Even the narrow hull showed no ripple. Only when Amasta jumped aboard did the boat suddenly sink 2 feet. Amasta's eyes flickered. Once again, the phenomenon confirmed his suspicion. The Gryffindor before him was not the real man. Judging by its size, the small boat seemed barely large enough for a single person to stand. Gryffindor occupied the center of the cabin, leaving Amasta crouched at the stern, half-bent. Of course, given that Gryffindor's current form was less substantial than a ghost, Amasta could easily have passed through him and sat more securely. Yet, out of caution and respect for Godric Gryffindor himself, Amasta refrained. He simply gazed at Gryffindor's back, his eyes full of reverence. A few months earlier, while still teaching at Hogwarts, Amasta had once discussed his mysterious purple eyes with Potter and Granger one evening, when he recounted how, even in his youth, he had pondered ways to confront a wizard like Dumbledore. The two had expressed incredulous shock, convinced